because those rights should be for the Japanese, not for foreigners. And I keep thinking, what advantage do foreigners have over the Japanese? A sacred place for martial arts. How are they going to give space to a foreign noisy band? It was dedicated to class war criminals like Prime Minister Toyo, who was like the Hitler of Japan. Many people compare it to the Nazi flag. Many people wonder where the center of Tokyo is. Most people imagine the Shibuya crossing or Shinjuku, Ginza, but no. The reality is that what we could call the center of Tokyo is here, where Tokyo Station is. And you might say, oh, if it's a center, if it's Tokyo Station, then the area around it must be great for doing a lot of things. The reality is that it's not. This is the Chiyoda district. Chiyoda is probably the most boring district in Tokyo, but we'll always try to find the interesting side at least. Now, Tokyo Station, though, is huge. It's the biggest station of all. And honestly, when you're inside that station, it's really easy to get lost. There's a massive underground shopping mall. Since we have the Japanese flag here, I'm going to tell you an interesting fact. Did you know that Japan has, if it's not the best flag, it's one of the best designed flags in the world? Why do I say that? For three reasons. One, the simplicity, minimalist. It's just white with a red circle. A 4-year-old kid could reproduce it. School kids can easily identify and replicate the flag. The other one, identity. There aren't any flags similar to Japan's. I mean, there are many countries with 3 colored stripes. Papa, hold on. I said best designed flags, not prettiest, because I know someone will say, no, my country's flag is the prettiest. No. I'm talking about well designed. We have the closest one. It would maybe be Korea's, right? Which also has a circle in the middle, but that one is much more complex. That one, nobody watching this video, unless they're Korean, is going to know how to draw the Korean flag without seeing it first. And then, well, there are a lot of beautiful flags, but sometimes they have crests that are super complex, and it's hard to identify them. I mean, there are a lot of flags that you can't memorize. And the third is symbolism. It's super simple. The flag is called Hinomaru, and Hinomaru is a word that's often used in patriotic products, so to speak, because Hinomaru basically means circle of the sun, which is a white flag that represents the sky and the red circle that represents the sun. Since Japan is considered the land of the rising sun, the country where the sun is born. Curiously, New Zealand sees the sunrise an hour earlier, but unfortunately, nobody paid attention to the New Zealanders. Many believe Japan is the first to celebrate New Year's, but it's actually New Zealand. But, well, beyond that, it has symbolism that's very well represented in a very simple way that's easy to replicate and identify. Well, Chiyoda would be the political and financial center of Tokyo. A lot of people confuse Shinjuku as the capital of Tokyo, but they get it mixed up. Because what Shinjuku actually has is the Tokyo Metropolitan Government Building, but there isn't a capital of Tokyo. Tokyo itself is the capital. But if a city or a district had to be considered the representative capital of Tokyo, it would have to be Chiyoda, because of the places we're visiting now. And well, just 10 minutes from Tokyo Station is the entrance to the Imperial Palace. If anyone wants to come visit, don't bother, because there's nothing here, absolutely nothing. Obviously, this is where the Imperial residence is. The Emperor lives here, and therefore, you can't come in to visit. In fact, there are 2 times a year when you can visit, when you can go through that door and see the Emperor and his family waving from behind a glass. That's January 2 for New Year's and February 23 for the Emperor's birthday. When the Emperor changes on his birthday, he has to dedicate the day. Instead of celebrating it, he has to go out and greet the people. Speaking of the Emperor, for example, he is a very respected figure. So in that sense, there are a lot of people who wonder if the Emperor is respected or not. But here he is respected a lot, because in the past, the Emperor was like a living god, since he was a descendant of the Shinto gods who created the country. And therefore, In the past, he was a very sacred figure, but of course, after losing World War II, the emperor had to declare that he was not a living god. Even so, respect for the emperor was still maintained because he is seen as a symbol of the country's identity. Because there is a lot of mythology behind what is just the figure of an important monarch. As a curiosity, also Japan has the longest living imperial dynasty because it has 2,500 years, more than 2,500 years of uninterrupted dynasty. The blood connection of the emperor was never lost from emperor to emperor. But the curious thing is that the Emperor of Japan is the only emperor in the whole world who is officially recognized as an emperor. Because the other emperors either cease to exist or are not recognized, right? There is about 11 square kilometers, of which about half, or at least more than 30%, must be occupied by the Imperial Palace. And it's the neighborhood with the smallest population. I mean, about 66,000 people live in the whole district, which is not much. Where I live is just a section of a district, and about 80,000 people live there. So there are more people living there. Basically, what we have here are offices. We have the Imperial Palace. We have a bunch of office buildings next to it, another bunch of office buildings, and even more office buildings. And sometimes people who go out for a run. Behind me is the Diet, or Parliament, south of the Imperial Palace, where the country's major decisions are made. The Parliament is divided between the upper house, which has about 200 members or so, and the lower house, which has about 600 members. The lower house is more important than the upper house. It has fewer members. Japanese people generally don't pay much attention to politics. But this year, there's been a pretty interesting movement around a party called Sansito, which is kind of like a far-right party, right? This year, the term Japanese first became really popular because people were saying that there needed to be a popular party where Japanese people could identify themselves. Like foreigners are getting benefits and those are being taken away from Japanese people. The truth is, I actually found it pretty funny. Recently, Japanese people at protests have been asking, why should foreigners have those rights instead of Japanese? And I keep thinking, but what advantage do foreigners have over Japanese people? Because of course, let's see, a foreigner, if they get an unemployment subsidy where they get paid for doing nothing, let's say if they have it just like any other Japanese citizen. They pay taxes. It's that simple. After searching and searching the main benefit, I found that foreigners have and Japanese people don't. It's for university scholarship students where people can apply for a scholarship and come to study. And they also pay you a little for your living expenses, so you can have time for your studies. But it's not like they're going to give you so much money that you can go out partying every day. It's not a full salary. You still need to work. But the progress, the advancement of this Sansito was huge because Sansito had, in the upper chamber, there was just one scanner, or rather one member in the entire diet, and in the lower chamber also only one member, two in total. And in this 2025, between the elections where people vote for the members of parliament, they increased to a total of 16 or 17 members. Going from 2 to 17 is a big jump. Although, well, let's consider that the parliament has a total of about 700 or 800 members. But for such a small party, it grew a lot in a short time. It's important to clarify that people sometimes claim the Japanese are racist or xenophobic and dislike foreigners. But the reality, and this is something the Japanese can't say, is that actually when people refer to foreigners and policies about foreigners, it's more focused on Chinese citizens. Because here, the majority of immigration in Japan is from China. But of course, they can't say, let's make policies against the Chinese. But the reality is that Sansito also wants there to be no foreign members in parliament, not to mention Chinese. Because what's happening, Japan has a population problem, right? In the next 50 years, If immigration is opened up, most of the people who will come will be Chinese. And so what happens if in 50 years, half of the parliament is Chinese? That's something people worry about, right? But look, in parliament, there are about 10 political parties, of which 40% belong to the Liberal Democratic Party. So it's not that Japan is already becoming an anti-immigrant country, super xenophobic, everything. But there are parties that are trying to be a bit cautious. But look, even the Communist Party is here too. It's considered one of the small ones. And this is one of the main reasons why Chiyoda would be the most boring district in Tokyo. It's precisely the district with the least entertainment. I mean, for tourism, for strolling around, everything related to leisure is lacking in Chiyoda district, because that's actually something done very intentionally. They specifically didn't want any disturbances around the Imperial Palace, where the Imperial family lives, and they put all the offices, administrative areas, everything related to government all around Chiyoda. And since there's no space for leisure, that means there aren't crowds of people. In fact, from here there's a park that has an amphitheater. Just last weekend I went to see the band Radio there, which isn't huge either. And there was another place over there, by the way. We're recording on a bicycle today because walking all the way around the Imperial Palace is torture. And there are subway lines, all that. But this would be going up and down, up and down, up and down all the time. But look, here is one of the entrances to the palace area. But it's really funny because you walk a lot to find an entrance that leads you to the exit, an entrance that leads to the exit. And people, surely tourists, come and see this giant gate and say, oh, let's see, this must be the entrance to the Imperial Palace. No, the Imperial Palace is not open to visitors. It only entrances that are exits. Here, for example, are the famous East Gardens of the Imperial Palace, which we are not going to enter because it's actually a very large place with a lot of walking and not much to appreciate. It's one of the last places I recommend visiting because it's free. It's not always open, plus it has a closed day schedule. So you have to know when to come. It's not worth it. And this is the closest thing to visiting the Imperial Palace that you can get. But honestly, it's really boring. And here we have the Nippon Budokan, which is a very famous event stadium that was originally built as an arena for martial arts fights, martial arts tournaments. Now, bands and various artists perform here. But the interesting thing is that the place was respected as a sacred martial arts venue. Not just for the architecture, but also for its symbolic location next to the Imperial Palace. Therefore, it was limited to martial arts only. But in the year 1966, for the first time in the history of the Nippon Budokan, a rock band came to perform. Which band was it? The Beatles, which was quite a controversy, a real scandal at that time, because of course, a sacred place for martial arts, right next to the Imperial Palace. How could they give space to a foreign, noisy music band? The thing is, they did it. In the end, they made it happen, and from there, the place started to become popular for all kinds of events. Music, rock, whatever. But the Beatles were the first to play at this place. And because of everything that happened, the band received all kinds of threats. Therefore, this whole area was surrounded by police and security to protect the Beatles' safety. No one wanted any members of the world's most famous band to get hurt. That was the last thing anyone wanted. I've been here several times. I saw the Japanese band Luna Sea and also Judas Priest. I think I only came twice. And in front of the Budokan, we have the Yasukuni Jinja, the Yasukuni Shrine, which is a shrine that was founded specifically to commemorate all those who served the country within military conflicts since the Meiji Restoration, which was from 1868. This has led to a great controversy. The fact is that in this shrine, They even commemorate class. War criminals from World War II were enshrined. Classe means they were the highest ranking war criminals in Japan. For example, Prime Minister Tojo, who was basically, in quotes, like the Hitler of Japan. The fact is that this is not a cemetery or a place where the ashes or remains of any soldier are kept, but rather it is a shrine that, in previous videos, you may have heard me mention that in Buddhism, funerals are practiced and cemeteries are managed by Buddhist temples. This has nothing to do with it. And this is one of the few cases where a Shinto shrine has a connection with death. In this case, let's say it's those who died in battle. Look, there's a Marine over there. But the only thing this shrine has inside the main sanctuary is something called Reijibo. It's like a scroll where the name of every soldier or person who served the country and died in the attempt is written. For example, not only soldiers, but there could also be war nurses or people who worked with supplies, everyone who was connected to serving the country during a military conflict. All of them are consecrated in the Reijibo, where their names are written. There are 2.5 million people recorded in the Reijibo. It must be a pretty big book, or maybe several. When World War II ended, class war criminals were not consecrated. This only happened in 1978 for a number of reasons. One was equality in death. The sanctuary doesn't say whether someone was good or bad, or whether they were useful in the war or not. Simply, if they died serving the country, they earned the right to be enshrined here. Another is that the sanctuary serves a religious function, not a political one. Another is that the deceased are not glorified. It simply commemorates the spirit of all the people who served the country. Another is national sovereignty, because it is considered as interference of international criticism, since Japanese citizens have the right to commemorate the dead regardless of what they have done. And finally, there is the family claim, because, of course, class of war criminals had their own families, children or wives, who demanded that they also be enshrined, because they had already paid for what they did and now had the right to be commemorated by their families in the same place, because they served the country just like the others. And well, the fact is that in 1978 is when the names of the war criminals were added. It was done in secret. In fact, not even the emperor knew about it. The following year, the press found out because the information that these people had been added was leaked. It was a national and international scandal from which they pulled out all the justifications that had already been analyzed before actually doing it. But they wanted to keep it a secret precisely because they knew it was going to be heavily criticized. But anyway, despite that, since that year, the emperor stopped visiting this shrine to avoid showing approval, which basically means he did what was politically correct. Basically, they were people the emperor knew personally, because the biggest criminals obviously had direct contact with the emperor. And here, attached to the grounds of the sanctuary, is the Yushukan Museum, for those who like war, stories, and all those things. It's very nice. Honestly, I highly recommend it because it has some war tanks from that era and some small airplanes. The first part can be visited for free. You can see it. So let's take a quick look, especially since it's about to close. The train, the plane, the cannons over there. Now look how interesting. Japan has two flags, the national flag, Hinomaru, and the rising sun flag. The fact is that this flag, well, both of them, this design that we know has been used since around 1870, more or less, although the concept of the Hinomaru has existed since the year 700. Now, the use of this flag is quite criticized because it represents what would be Imperial Japan, colonial Japan, invading Japan. But, well, the reality is that this is the symbol of today. It belongs to the naval fleet, although initially it would represent Japan at war. This kind of represents the army, right? Therefore, its use is highly criticized. But there are a lot of people who compared it to the Nazi flag, which is incorrect, because this flag has been around for quite a few years, before World War II, right? But it's more or less. But the fact is that sometimes the use of the rising sun flag is seen as something a little bit aggressive. Maybe, for example, the Bosozokos, who are basically motorcycle gang members, it's very common for them to have helmets with the rising sun flag or decorations, many with this Japanese flag design. We're not going to give opinions, but let's see. It's a bit confusing, a bit strange, isn't it? And here we are in a military goods store, which isn't the same area where we're filming. Rather, we're at the end of where we are in this video. But anyway, the thing is, don't worry, weapons are illegal here. This is all airsoft. Ah, look how nice these helmets are. They're from World War I. Oh. This is really heavy. Very nice. Well, the thing is, this is a store. It's really hot and we deserve a break with some ice cream, even if it's from a machine. These machine ice creams are good, you know. This cheesecake flavor is really good. I love it. Now, if we move a little bit away from the Imperial Palace, you start to see a bit more commercial activity in addition to the offices and all that. And there's an area that belongs to the Chiyoda district, although it's a little bit separated, a bit far away. But well, it works as a loophole. It's the same district. So we're going to visit that district. But here on this side at night is deadly. You have no idea what it's like to go through this area at night. It feels like a zombie zone because absolutely no one or nothing passes by. The streets are completely dead. The first commercial area we have in Chiyoda, near the Imperial Palace, would be the Jimboko area, which is famous for being a street full of bookstores. Old bookstores, I mean, but honestly, I don't. Well, I think once it was there. Over there, they had a few pieces of art, kind of cool paintings. They were nice. I'm not into literature and can't read Japanese well. So why would I come to a neighborhood like this? Like the next neighborhood. The musical instrument neighborhood. But basically, about 5 blocks from Jinbocho, you have these streets which are about 2 or 3 blocks, no more than that. But it's all concentrated on musical instruments of all kinds. Obviously, what you see the most are guitars, right? But there's a bit of everything. And this one caught my attention because they have photos. Oh, they have guitars modeled after famous people. Of course. Well, the photo isn't next to the guitar model, but it says models they have or are looking to buy for the store to sell. The band Scandal. I really like this band. Well, I only like their first albums, that's all. But there are photos of many great artists. Honestly, I have nothing to do here since I don't even play the tambourine. And there, in the neighborhood of musical instruments, there's something I love, which is the train tracks that make big divisions, right? Of environments. Because here on this side, Akihabara. Akihabara is part of the Chiyoda district. You can see on the map what Chiyoda is. And it's a whole nice circle around the Imperial Palace and a little tab that sticks out, which includes Akihabara, where we are now, the otaku neighborhood, which has nothing to do with everything else we've seen. It caught my attention because my friend Dani said Torakon was here, which is what's called a Kekkon Sodanjo. What's a Kekkon Sodanjo? It's officially, it's like, let's call it an office where you go, pay for a service that comes with some advice and a bunch of other things. But the thing is, that's the place to look for partners. I mean, but with the goal of getting married, right? Because actually, Kekkon means marriage, and Saudanjo would be something like marriage assistance or marriage counseling. But it's really crazy, because since it's the one in Akihabara, it's like to be able to match with someone who's kind of a geek, right? It's really crazy. It's the first time I've seen it. It makes me laugh a lot, but it makes a lot of sense that there's a Kekkon Sodanjo that's exclusive for geeks. That's cool. But anyway, look, there are the maids, the girls. Let's see if we can get into one today. Well, I've already made several Akihabara videos. We're not going to go around checking out stores. Let's see if we can show something different this time. Well, we went inside and we can only record ourselves, and basically, well, let's see. I was asking them a bit too about some differences with the maid cafe. You've already seen what it's like. It is basically a bar that opens in the afternoon and you can talk with the girls. The maid cafe isn't for conversations, it's more for casual chatting. And then there are the girls' bars. The difference with girls' bars is that they're usually a bit more of a nighttime environment. Usually the prices change because it's a service where there's a bit more flirting with the girls. And in the girls' bars, they usually don't wear costumes. Although there are also girls' bars where they do wear costumes that look like maids, right? And this place has a very Disney style, like Beauty and the Beast. That's the concept of the place. That's why it's called Concafe. It comes from Concept Cafe, and that's it. That's all. But we won't stay much longer because it's a little expensive here. It's 3,000 yen for 45 minutes of all you can drink, excluding beer. I'm having a Cassis Orange. It barely has any alcohol. I'm treating Danny. With both of us, that's 6,000 yen. And besides, here it's normal to buy drinks for the girls.
And the girls don't stop ordering drinks?
They keep drinking and asking for more. We buy them drinks, and each one for the girls costs 1,500 yen. There are two girls, and we buy drinks for both. The bill is already 9,000 yen, about $60 for just two drinks and a brief conversation. And they just had a drink and we're already done, and they invite us for another one. I said, no, we're almost done, that's enough. Really, that's it. But anyway, the girls are super nice, super friendly, but they usually don't speak English.
Do you speak English? No, I don't speak English. Okay, it's fine, it's fine.
And well, about the girls who are there on Akihabara Avenue, we asked, but no one let us record there. We even asked one if we could just record ourselves. Well, yeah, maybe let's ask the manager. I don't know. And well, they brought us here. See how hard it is to find a place? I mean, do you see this here? And well, in that one, in number 8, you realize that there are girls. They took us to the 7th floor, the Beauty and the Beast Concept Cafe. I'm really tired now. See you next time. Greetings to your family, pet, and annoying neighbor.